over the years, as we like had our different families of beers, we've developed kind of like some style guidelines for different, styles of beers. Like we had this cast of characters, sort of like told a story about them. So the first like probably 3 or 4 years of bottle labels were very connected. Oftentimes revolved around like the house where the brewery was. It was like different rooms. There's a couple that are like up in the attic. So the house is from the 1880s. It's like anyone who walked in, then there would be like, this place is haunted. So we had a Reiki master come in and do like a cleanse of the house before, and it was pretty interesting.
All right, so welcome back to the BrewedAt podcast. I'm your host, Richie Tevlin, and I'm joined, as always, by Evan Blum. And today we welcome on Forest and Main. So before I kind of introduce you, Forest, if you don't know what Forest and Main is, like probably living under a rock. If you're from Philadelphia, they've been a staple in the Philadelphia craft beer scene for the last, 12 years.
Yep.
And I know many publications have said that you guys might be the best Saisons brewery in the whole country or the world, best English beer brewer in the whole country, and you guys, are a local Philadelphia craft brewery, so to get those accolades, from kind of, the neighborhood spot that you guys you guys are clearly doing something right. And, I'm very excited to kind of hear your story. Like, I've known who you are for a long time, so I want to kind of hear from the man,
Cool.
hear how it came started. So, Dan Endicott from Forest and Main.
Awesome. Really happy to be here. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for the nice introduction.
Of course.
Yeah, so story? The
yeah,
background?
I guess. So you guys are 12 years old.
Yeah, we just had our 12th anniversary 2 weeks ago, I guess. Almost 2 weeks
nice.
ago. Yeah.
Congrats.
Thanks. So I've been around for a while now. A lot's changed in 12 years in the beer scene around here. So myself and my partner, Jared Olson, started 12 years ago. And started like 10 years ago, really, but opened 12 years ago. The two of us had a passion for different families of beers. I was really passionate about the English, British style beers, and Jared was really into the Saisons, like French, Belgian style beers. And we were good friends at the time. We kind of grew up in nearby school districts. My brother was friends with him. I met him, and then we were both home brewing and got into beer and became friends like that. So as I got closer to kind of like doing my thing, turned out he wanted to do his thing, and just like, why don't we do this together?
Yeah, makes sense.
Pool the little bit of money that we have and the resources that we have. And it seemed like the Saisons and British style beers are like very different in many ways, but also very similar. Just like the history of them, they're very romantic and tied to the place where they're made, and also predominantly like low alcohol, made for drinking and repeated pints of, and talking to people and having food with it, and which is, I feel like at the time, very different than the craft beer scene was. This is 2010. Yeah. I think at that point it was like, how many IBUs can you have?
Yeah.
And what's like your triple IPA? Yeah. So we were like very balanced, low ABV beers. So we started looking around. We were looking in Philly at first. We were both living kind of out near Ambler, but we felt like we should do it in Philly, and then the more we looked in Philly, like nothing felt right. And he was starting a family at the time, and I'm just not a city person, so it was like, I think the two of us realized that, we're better off somewhere outside of Philly.
I mean, outside the city, but still kind of in the city. I would
consider
you guys a Philadelphia brewery.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're not out in the country.
Yeah,
you're good, like stone's throw away.
Exactly, and we had a few stipulations that we wanted to meet. We wanted to be on the train line so people from Philly could come out and visit us. We wanted to have like a kind of downtown feel, like an old, like, I guess, rail town, really. Which is what Ambler is. At the time, it had a few really cool places in it. It had a movie theater that had kind of revitalized the whole town, and we started looking out there. Found this, like, we looked at this one building, and it was way too big, needed way too much work. And then like right next door was this cute little Victorian house from the 1880s, and our real estate agent was like, "What?" There was a for rent sign. It's like, "Why don't we look at this?" Like, he's crazy. We can't put a brewery and restaurant in there. And at the time, also, you had to open with a restaurant, so we were like, you had to serve food and sell pints. So we were planning on doing a restaurant, even though neither of us had any restaurant experience.
Figure it out when you get there.
Exactly. The farthest main way, or the most brewers' way. So the more we looked at this little house, we're like, I don't know, it's just kind of crazy enough to work, and it has that kind of like British pub or French cafe feel to it. So we went for it, and we made it work, and we crammed this. And
was it still a residential building when you moved in?
No, it was zoned commercial, which is
Okay.
nice. So we wouldn't, if it had not been that, we wouldn't have
Yeah, I mean,
we didn't have
crazy.
the wherewithal to go through that whole thing.
For
Nowadays we'd even be like, I don't know, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But back then that would have been way too daunting. So yeah, it had been a bakery, and where the bakery was like an addition they'd put on the back of the building, and so the brew house we were working with was an old dairy. Old dairy equipment that was kind of cobbled together. It was like your classic kind of home
Start a
brewer,
brewery
turned
equipment.
some equipment, like put a burner under it, and you can eventually boil stuff. So it was, and we had some old Grundy tanks, which you
Yep.
know, yeah, these like spaceship-looking things from England, pretty much around like World War II time. They're great. They're like our favorite tanks actually now. With like a whole new brew house, they're still some of our favorite tanks.
Old reliable.
Exactly. They have these huge lids you can take off, so they're great for like fruiting saisons and doing weird stuff. So anyway, the brew house that we had just barely fit in this back room, and so we were like,
I saw some
it
pictures
works.
of it. It was like, literally stacked on top of each other.
It was, yeah, and it got worse. It looked good, but like when we opened, we're like, all right, there's some nice like 4 square feet open in the middle, and then we're like, well, we need more equipment and this and that, So
I couldn't imagine
add
trying to
one.
keep that clean. I mean,
Oh my god, it was
great for, I guess,
it was
making
a nightmare.
saisons, but
Yeah, I
the
mean-
English style beer is like,
It's still crazy to think about the beers. I mean, we're there for 9 years, I guess. The beers we turned out through that system, it's nuts. But
Made
it
it
was
work.
cool. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And I mean, the house drove us nuts. It was like, just you can imagine a house from the 1880s with like a working restaurant and a working brewery in it, and then like 50 to 100 people coming through every night.
what was the restaurant portion of that? Like, what type of food was that? Like, how did that come about?
So when we opened, my sister had gone to Penn State, and one of her roommates up there, went on to culinary school.
Okay.
And was working at a restaurant up in New York City, and heard about what we were doing, and was like, I guess, looking to get out of New York City, and was kind of excited for the opportunity to run her own thing. So when we started, the food was phenomenal. Like Inquirer, Craig LaBan came out and reviewed us.
Nice.
And which is like, I think also a marker of like how different that time period was, that like, a brewery made, Craig LaBan's radar with the food, which I guess he still pays attention to some of that.
Yeah, I
but-
mean, but him coming out to anything, it's almost like whether it's good or bad, it's like if you're on his radar, like
Exactly.
he's a
Yeah.
force of nature.
Yep. So the food was great. It was sort of like French inspired. We had mussels and frites, and then a lot of like just really labor intensive dishes. Her heritage is Ukrainian, so she's making like pierogies and just really really awesome stuff.
And like nothing having to do with, I guess, saisons or English style beers,
I
but
mean, you
like
could argue
in my,
mussels.
I think that goes together. I guess like
Exactly, yeah.
The flavor profiles I feel like would go very well with
Yep.
that.
And then we had a burger that we were known for, and like different types of popcorns, which I feel like were really cool back then, like
Nice.
a bacon popcorn.
Yeah.
But they were in the kitchen working from like 9 in the morning on until we opened at 4 for dinner service.
Oh, wow.
And it was nuts, and like the food was phenomenal, but we just couldn't pay. It just like didn't work, for
Yeah.
the number of seats
Yeah.
and just the location, So I think that lasted like 2 years, and then we were like, all right, we need to change the menu a little bit. And also just the physical nature of the place. There's a very quick burnout for chefs there. You had to like run up to the office to get stuff from the freezer, and then outside the walk-in, and it was just like nothing was functional, And it was really cool and fun, and like a badge of honor for a lot of people to do. But then at the end of the day, it's just like
It
this is
wasn't
exhausting.
sustainable, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So the food menu kind of like we slimmed it down over the years, and eventually got to like some pub fare that was good, and we had a cool team in there, and it was still food they were proud of, but it was a long way from like the lamb shank and the pierogies and
For sure.
and like the fine dining food that we opened with, and so then fast forward, COVID happened, and we closed the restaurant, and I think Jared and I knew that like the restaurant had been keeping us back for a long time. I think if we had not been selling our own beer that we made, we would have probably closed like a year into it.
Wow.
just because like the margins for your own beer, especially back then, like they were really good.
And restaurant margins are like 5%, and it's
yeah.
probably just as much labor as running the brewery itself.
Exactly. So the beer kept the restaurant afloat, and when we had this, we never wanted to make the decision, even though we knew it was like sort of the right thing to do.
Yeah.
To close the restaurant and have
Just
to let
focus on the
people
beer.
go. But when COVID forced us with that, we're like, all right, this is a chance for us to kind of pivot.
Yeah.
And so at the time, our brewer, Brian DeAngelo, was looking to do his own thing. And then when COVID happened, he decided he had no interest in doing his own thing anymore. So he came to us and was like, hey, I really enjoy working with you guys. And at this point, we knew him. We're like, we all get along really well. And he had some money that he was going to do his own thing with. And he's like, I'd like to invest in Forest Domain and become a partner.
And is that how the new brew house happened?
Jared and I, if it was up to us, would still be like slaving away and wondering why things were so hard. So Brian was like, yeah, we should expand. This brewery's insane. Like, it just doesn't work. It's cool. But so we found it. We're lucky to find a place like 2 blocks north. I don't know if you've been to the new brewery at all.
Yeah, it's nice.
I believe so.
So it's like we're still in the borough of Ambler, which is like a point of pride for us, and because we all actually live in Ambler.
So the pub that you guys have now, I mean, that's different than the original house that you guys were at?
So we went kind of 2 different ways. The brewery went one way to like a warehouse up the street, and then the pub. We love the house, and as much as I bitch about it, and it was a nightmare, like it is a really special place in our hearts. But we're like, if we don't have a restaurant, can we?
It's hard to maintain that.
Does it work? It's a weird, disjointed, like 4 bedrooms and.
So the pub, it feels like an old timey home, and I guess that's newer. Is that kind of the same feel that the house had?
Very much so. Yeah, I mean, we literally
just took everything that was in there and just moved it over.
It was like we had to deal with drop ceiling and put like a nicer ceiling in and change the floors that were carpeted and everything. But yeah, we were lucky that like it had this nice feel to it, like the corner windows and. We put that one middle room in with all the windows in there. Mm-hmm. So we like did a few things, but
you still have the dartboard.
Yep, still the dartboard. But yeah, otherwise we were like, all right, let's just move everything over. Yeah. And like so we're really really lucky that I'm really happy that we were able to keep the feel of the old place.
And those are all right downtown Ambler. I mean, I've been to the new pub. Honestly, I'd never been to the old house. Yeah. It's right there.
So Ambler's like a square mile, not a total square, but it's like a mile across.
Okay, so if
it's small.
If you're in Ambler, you're close.
Yeah, exactly. But even where we originally were was like 2 blocks off of the main street in Ambler, which was just enough for it to be like out of the way for people. When they're up on the main drag, seeing a movie or getting dinner. It was just far enough that like a lot of people had no idea we were even there, which is wild. But we had people that drove by. Like it was a main street. Like for a lot of people to get to their neighborhood, they would come in and be like, I would drive by here every day, and I had no idea what this was.
I mean, it had like a front yard and everything.
Exactly. Yeah. So, so then COVID happened, and here we are at the new brew house. That's like twice the size of the old place, the old brewery, and much more efficient. Leaps and bounds more efficient. And then
it's the specific mechanical brew house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's great.
Nice.
We lucked out. Someone had so when we decided to like start doing this, the lead time was like almost a year, I think, for a new system. But someone had commissioned one.
Fuck this.
No, unfortunately, I think he passed away from COVID.
Oh, wow,
yeah.
Geez,
it was like it was a weird combo. It was like a distillery and a brewery there. I don't know where they were trying to open it.
Yeah.
So they kind of had a lot of stuff we were looking for, like with the mash tun to get decoctions and everything. It's a little more like high tech than we wanted. It's totally like touchscreen, computerized. But they gave us a good deal on it, and like it's ready.
It's available and is ready to go.
So that kind of sped things up a little bit. And,
what the tanks that you have now are like 20 and 30 barrel. What were the size tanks that you had before? Were they all like 7 barrel tanks?
7
barrel, yeah. I mean, I think some of them, 2 of them were like weird Italian wine fermenters that were hectoliters, and I still haven't mastered.
Did they even have glycol jackets on them?
For a number of years now. Yeah. For a long time we had no glycol.
Oh my god!
So we would use different yeast during different times of the year, and it's very akin to like the beers that we were into. The
definitely. I mean, it makes it more. I mean, they're super clean. That's like very impressive that you're able to keep it like that. But it's a lot of labor.
Yep. And it took a long time to knock out in the summer. It was,
oh my god!
But here we are. And, we often talk about like would we change things? Would we do them differently? And it's like, I don't know. As dumb as a lot of the stuff we did was, I don't know if I'd change it because it got us here.
Exactly.
Like,
it made it
we learned a
into
lot.
what it is
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
So.
And it makes it special, you know, like part of craft beer is like it is that making it happen. You know, if everything was
For sure.
perfect, it would just be
Yeah, it's no fun in that.
You know,
like, yeah.
you know, science at that point. You know, there's a little bit of magic behind it.
Yeah, and I feel like the two families of beers that we were really most passionate about have a lot of that magic.
Definitely.
You know, especially Saison.
And also the fact that you don't have glycol is great.
Yeah.
The English mountains. I heard you guys were known for warm, flat beer.
Yes. Did you listen to Jared's interview recently, or?
I did not. But
Okay, he was on like the Brewer, and yeah, but that was our reputation for a while. Well, the first summer we opened, it was actually like a legit house. People came and visited us, and they're like, oh, my granddad lived here. My grandma was born here.
You're in that room now.
Yeah, people were born and died in this house, and like relatives came and visited.
Jeez.
But anyway, so the basements were like 3-4 feet tall. You know, it was an old like they call them rat cellars, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's where we had the first casks.
Oh my God.
The first summer we opened.
You guys are like a legitimate like English brewery for 1800.
Exactly. And we're like, we don't need any glycol or any like fridges down here, and we opened in April, and the beers were like spot on when we opened, and then come August, we're like, all right, these are too warm for us, you know. So eventually we got some glycol on the lines, so the casks themselves were still like not chilled, but
so from the beginning you guys had casks.
Yes, we
awesome.
We had to have that. We opened with like 3 hand pumps in the bar, so we were known for that for sure, because a lot of people, especially you know the local customers who came, were like, I have no idea what this is, you know.
Yeah, I think right now English beer is making a comeback. Like brown ale is somehow cool. Like what? Brown ale was like always the butt of the joke of like it is the most uncool type of beer.
Exactly.
Like the nut brown ale, and like what now? That's the cool style of beer. And like you guys, I mean not brown ale specifically, but English beers. You guys have been doing that for 12 years.
Yeah.
And the whole carbonation is very cool now, or uncarbonation, whatever you want to call it, is very cool.
Yeah.
Like you guys have been playing in that field since you started.
They're my favorite beers to drink. For those reasons, like the lack of carbonation and just the crazy amount of flavor that you get in this like 4% beer. Then there's also the other side where it's just like the whole romance that goes along with that beer. Whether you're drinking it at home by yourself or like in my head, it always has like just the connotation of you're like at a pub and you're with good company.
It feels like it's alive. You know?
Exactly.
It feels like you're tasting it.
There's more. It's more than just a beer. It's like the history comes with it. I think a little bit. Which is cool.
Definitely.
Even if I just imagine it, it's still
it's very cool. And like the English beers, like it's like you said, like they're very different. But I would consider like the overall category of table beer would be kind of both of those. It's something that's like just low ABV and just very consumable, and
exactly.
It has a ton of depth, but it's with lower ABV, I guess.
Yep. I would say like they're the beers that like you can either just slam in like 3 sips pretty much and not think about, or you can like think about every sip and just like the nuances of the flavor that's in there, because it's sort of whatever you want. It's a complex beer or a very simple beer, depending on what you're in the mood for.
That's cool. So I mean, we talked about the English beers, but you guys are known for the English beers and the Saisons.
Yep.
I guess Jared is the Saison guy.
He is, yeah.
So before we get into that, so you came from a beer background. Did you go to I guess brewing school or some sort of brewing
I was
course?
homebrewing for a long time, and then I guess
and you were brewing mostly English style beers.
Yeah, I mean, I try and figure out I always give Yard's ESA credit for getting me into English style beers. I mean, it's
you and a lot of other people kind of
inspired. It's still one of my favorite beers in the world. I don't see it much these days, but it's so good. But I guess somehow I got really into that, and I was like, that was like my entryway to English style beers, and that's predominantly what I was brewing at home. I got like head first into brewing. I was brewing like every weekend, just way too much beer.
How old were you like when you started brewing?
I was 25, I guess. Yeah. So I'd gone to college. Actually, I didn't even drink anything
really
up until I was like 24, I think, and then got my brother a homebrew kit for Christmas and made it with him, and I was like, well, I should try this. I was like, that's pretty good. And here I am. So it was just always English beers for me, and I appreciated Saisons as well, and still do, but I'll always grab an English beer over a Saison. But Jared was sort of like the opposite side of that with Saisons, and I learned a crazy amount about Saisons from him, and still learn to this day from him.
I'm sure you guys coming together in the beginning, like he had his, production, little tricks to how he made beer work, and like you had your production tricks about how you made English beer work, and like you guys coming together, like kind of.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, he was brewing professionally at the time at McKenzie Brew House.
Okay.
Which
Yeah.
Still around. Yeah.
Yep.
It's just like a weird little enigma of a brewery. I guess that
it's
Breweries,
like the Iron Hill Junior kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, the owner was like so hands off at the time that they were able to do like weird shit like barrel aged saisons, and like he had no idea. And then they won a gold medal for a saison at GABF, and here they are, this little like place in
That's
whatever.
so funny.
I forgot what major road that is, but like they mainly like they have a nightlife scene, and it's just like no one's there drinking saison, but they were known for it. So I was just homebrewing. Then as I got further and further into it, I was like, I want to do something with this. I decided to go take a brewing course in England that specialized just in like making cask beer.
Cool.
Wow.
Which is like, it was just a crash course in cask conditioned beer.
I guess like you being a home brewer, you had the experience brewing, but I'm sure that course, like the other side of the cask and like the cellar portion of that is probably like a whole nother monster, especially for English beer.
But in some ways, it's very similar to home brewing. I mean, it's just like you figure out a way to do things. It's oftentimes like the easiest way,
putting things together,
the fastest way, and it makes sense, and you don't have a lot of fancy equipment. I mean, I feel like English beer has caught up a lot in the 15 years, I guess that's been, maybe more than that. But at the time, most breweries over there were still very much just making cask beer, and the brew houses were very similar to what we wound up using at Forest and Maine. Like, not most vessels weren't pressurized. It was a lot of open fermentation. You just like the beer gets to a certain point, and then you package it while it's still fermenting. And I just remember my mind was blown where like there were some firkins coming back within like 7 days of when the beer was brewed. It had been brewed, packaged, gone out to a pub, consumed,
and then
returned
back
empty within like 7 days of brew day.
Most beer that's produced nowadays, like it's not even like leaving to the distributor in 7 days.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was really opened my eyes to what you could do.
What was your brew house originally? Like what kind of heat source did you have?
It was direct fire kettle.
Okay, very cool. There's even more.
And it took forever to heat up. I mean, our brew days were long when we first started, like real long. We had no on-demand hot water or cold water.
Jeez.
So we'd have to. It was like a 2-person brew day. One of us would get in early, and you basically just sit there while you brought the whole kettle up to like I forget what temperature. And then we had a vessel where we pumped that to just to hold it, and you have to account for like how much temperature we lose over the brew day. Yeah. So then you fill the kettle up again, and that was then all your hot water for the day. It was
And now I'm sure your brew house is like a 2-brew 1-person day.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean it's and you can usually clean kegs while you're doing it.
Yeah.
So it's
much different.
Yeah. And we have a forklift and all the stuff,
All these fancy tools.
Yeah, it's crazy. So,
so I guess, can you talk on like the saisons a little bit? I mean, I know that you're not the saison guy, but like you've been seeing it for 12 years. I imagine you know a lot more about saison than most people.
Pretty, I feel like I can talk about them. So I mean, Jared brought that to the table, and it's I feel like a lot of people make saisons, but Jared makes saisons in a very Jared way that I think is unlike anyone else.
Was that like a malt billet or like the yeast that he's using?
It's the yeast, really, and just the mentality. I mean, which is just, it speaks a lot to him. I mean, he has a innate understanding of certain things, and I feel like
these things need to happen, and these things,
and
that
like
we can play with.
I feel like the yeast. A lot of people talk about how yeast is like a living thing, but I think Jared like fully embodies that.
Yeah.
And it's like the conditions have to be right for the yeast, which everyone knows. You have to have the right temperature, everything, but it goes beyond like those like tangible elements that most people concern themselves with when they're brewing. With Jared, it's much more of like a state of mind, and
he's taking care of this yeast. He can like it's his child.
Exactly. Yeah. Very much so. And he, for him, the yeast isn't just like it makes the beer and that's done. It's like the yeast is like a part of the beer that goes on. It like makes an imprint on the beer, and then it stays with it, and it's going to change it for years and years to come. So I think for the first year we used like a White Labs or Y yeast, saison yeast that probably most people use. But then, and this is where Jared is like the mastermind behind the Saisons. He's like, this is cool, but it's not like there's none of that like romance that we're talking about to the Saison.
It's too
it's just like, I bought it from the store or whatever, and it's like I'm adding it to the beer and it's making Saison. So he realized that, or he decided that he wanted to like culture up yeast from somewhere nearby, and then use that yeast to make the Saison. And I don't know if it was that well thought out at the time, or if it was just like, let's see what yeast is around and see what I can make with it. And there was this cherry tree out front of the pub that would blossom every year, and it's like beautiful, beautiful tree. So I took some flowers off of that and like grew the yeast up off of that, and it made like perfect Saison. And it's just like, I don't know that anyone else but Jared could have done that. Like I think if anyone else tried to culture that yeast, and we have actually given that yeast to other people to use, and it just like doesn't behave. So I very much think like Jared is the yeast wrangler, the Saison master with that. So, and that's what I mean. For Jared, it's like goes beyond just like order a Saison yeast, get the right malt bill, and it's just like, and he's very much like involved with the beers through the whole process, not just like taking readings and stuff like every brewer does, but
you're
it's
tasting
just like,
it the whole time.
It's like there's like another sense of intuition there for him with the beers. Like, this one tastes terrible now, but it'll come around.
Just be patient.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think the Saisons are super special beers, and really built our name on those. We used to have these bottle releases, and people would line up, and they'd sell out. That doesn't happen anymore. But
so when you originally were brewing in like the first couple of years, were you guys were bottling?
Yeah,
this?
so
were you guys canning any beer?
No, we weren't canning at all. We eventually started doing crowlers. I forget where that was on the time frame. But no, our only packaged beer was bottles, and it was just Saison.
And it was just like these hand-filled.
Yep, very much hand-filled. I mean,
750s. 750s.
Yeah, it's a 750.
Cool.
We started doing like the 375, or there's a 500 milliliter or something.
Yeah, the mini ones.
Yeah, so we started doing some of those and some of these, but it was like filling one bottle at a time with like the homebrew gun. And it's like there's a picture of us in the brewery. And it was like a 3-person job, and like pretty much have this like table of empty room in the middle of the brew house, and like we had the bucket full of iodine with the bottles in it. One person would like empty them, other person would fill it, the other person would cap it and dry it, box it. And it's just like round and round, and we would do it from kegs too, which was totally stupid, but that was the only way we could do it. So
like, why does my beer cost $12? Like, okay, we'll look at this.
Yeah. And then to finish that off, the labels were often like printed out at Kinko's and like cut out by hand and glue sticked on.
Sick of your POS system being a POS? POS Specialists, powered by Heartland, have been the experts in cutting-edge POS technology for over 20 years. But they're not scriptwriters, so they let AI write their script. Thirsty for a delicious deal? Feast your eyes on our tastefully crafted point-of-sale system. From order up to cash out, this POS is the coriander spice your brewery needs. It'll have you saying, Brost. Yikes. See? That's why they have a 24/7 live phone support, not chatbots. Their experienced project managers will program your POS, train your staff, so you can just focus on the beer and not worry about the AI. Ask about their free processing options, handhelds, and online ordering. Email kevin@posspecialists.com. Mention BrewedAt and get $500 off your install. Email kevin@posspecialists.com.
So,
At what point did you start making the labels?
Pretty soon after that.
Yeah.
I mean, we were only doing like 100 some bottles at a time, so I don't think any big printer would have even done it for us at that point.
And have you always been the artist here? Like, have you been designing the labels?
Yep. I went to art school before doing all this, so for a number of, I forget when we did our first bottle, but there were no labels for a while, and we would do a couple bottles a year, and that was like a fun project to do a label. And then we've just grown into doing cans and all that, so now it's like a full-time job doing the labels. But yeah,
it's labels, but it's like art. I mean, what you're putting out is it's beyond just can labels. I mean, you could you are an artist, you are you do have your own art gallery shows, and some of this stuff is not typical can labels. It's not just graphic design wallpaper stuff.
I always joke that there are a handful of labels that I never would have been able to do if it was for hire for another brewery.
Yeah.
What is you? You can't put this on a can.
Your labels are one
And
of
they're
those
different, too.
stunning,
Oh, thank you.
Definitely eye-catching ones that
Thanks.
I've always seen.
And there's so much variety to them. Like there's not just one style.
Yeah, we've developed. I mean, over the years, as we like had our different families of beers, we've developed kind of like some style guidelines for different styles of beers, so you can sort of the real like astute.
And what were they like
buyer.
originally? Was it mostly illustration based at first?
Mostly illustration. I mean, especially the first couple bottles, we.
And was there color to it? Like
There
I know
were,
you
yeah,
used
they
some,
were like pen and ink
watercolors.
watercolors, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And they very much told us, like we had this cast of characters.
That was my next question.
Sort of like told a story about them. So the first like probably 3 or 4 years of bottle labels were very connected and
It's very cool.
Oftentimes revolved around like the house where the brewery was. It was like different rooms. There's a couple that are like up in the attic, which all ties back. We had this like. So the house is from the 1880s. It's like anyone who walked in, then there would be like, this place is haunted. So we had a Reiki master come in and do like a cleanse of the house before, and it was pretty interesting. There were these 2 women, and they would tell us like all different cast of characters that were in the house.
And those were the characters?
Some of them were the characters, yeah. So there was
Very
probably like
cool.
a troll that lived in the basement, and then like a man and a woman who lived in separate sides of the attic. So they relate to some of the characters on the labels.
That's really cool. I know, like your Christmas series this year. One of my favorite things that's what caught me
Oh, cool.
significantly.
Thanks. Those are fun.
Really cool characters. Just
Thanks.
like you could tell, there's so much more behind that, and like it. I don't know. It just builds this beer and brand so differently.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, we always talk about our brand, or not always. Whenever it comes up, we're like. We never like consciously thought of it as a brand. It was just like came from the 2 of us, and turned into a brand very organically. Which
Yeah, I mean,
is nice,
it's you guys who you are. I mean, I guess you're a painter. You're an illustrator. We talked about this before. You guys play music, so like you guys have the anniversary party every year where all the bands come through, and you guys had your own band at one point. Like the beer, obviously, is its own art. And we just talked about it's like less science, more of an art for you guys.
For sure.
And then also, it's just like the design of everything. I mean, like you guys kind of put together the whole look and feel of the tap room, and it's not like you guys bought like all the same furniture. It was like it looked like you guys like hand pieced everything together, but somehow it all looks like it fits.
We did, yeah. I mean, it was cool, and that was like my art project for a year when we were opening. It's like how to take this old house in the 1880s, and the house had tons of character. You didn't have to do too much. I mean, when we got into it, it was like carpeted and there was track lighting and everything. But once we uncovered like the bones of the house, it kind of dictated what it wanted to do. But yeah, it's just that stuff just happens organically for us, and I think that's cool because I could never like if I was hired by you and you're like I want to open this like Irish themed pub, whatever, I would be terrible at that. Just like trying to make your vision happen.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was just like it happened.
I mean, it's genuinely you guys. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Like the breweries that are successful, like, they kind of stick to the roots. They're not copying other people.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're super stubborn, and we've been brewing these styles of beer for years that like no one really cared about. We're lucky that now, like 12 years later, people are kind of like, oh, mild's cool, And
yeah, we've been there.
Yeah. So it's I mean, we just like we're. I don't know if many people are like proud of being stubborn, but we're very proud that like we just kind of like put our head down and we're not chasing trends. We're just like these are the beers we're really passionate about. These are the beers we really like to drink, and it's just like if we make something, it's going to be like from our hearts and done to the best of our abilities.
Definitely, I feel like the look and feel of the tap room is kind of just like you're not chasing people in there, but like when people that just like walk in, they're like, oh, they feel like welcome. It's just like they feel comfortable coming in. It's like this is a cool experience that I just walked into.
Yeah, and we hear that a lot, and I would say like that's 100% our staff. Like we design the building and like make the beers and everything, but after that, it's like you're interacting with the staff, and they're phenomenal, and like I give them all the credit in the world because they make it the welcoming place that it is.
Definitely, it's like the tap room is like the microcosm of the entire brewery itself. Like the bartenders, almost the salespeople, and it's like kind of like they when a normal, I mean, I know who you are, but people that aren't plugged in the craft beer scene, they don't know who you are. When they walk into Forest and Main, like what they determine Forest and Main is how the bartender is.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's like if they get a bad feel from the bartender, if the bartender like isn't your culture, it like gives them a totally wrong image about what you're trying to project as a company.
Yeah, and we have a great like set of local customers who are they're like family now at this point.
Even more
awesome.
like like the English bar scene is just like
For sure.
you got your neighborhood
it's
tap
great.
room.
Yeah, I feel very lucky about that.
So I guess you guys have been very true to yourselves, and what I've been told in the past, I've never felt this way talking to you guys. You guys have always been like very welcoming to me and everyone I've known, but like it's always Forest and Main is like hard to get in contact with. Or like it's like you guys are like just doing your own thing. You guys aren't concerned with anything else. Which is one, it's a very cool image to have.
We're guilty of that.
But you guys do have. Like, you guys are out there. So, like, you guys are, like, creating your art and you're putting it out there. We talked about before you came on, like, Not Your Father's Beer.
Yep.
So that was, like, almost like a chef's table version of a craft brew where, like, they came in, an Amazon Prime documentary came in and kind of, like, showed exactly who you guys were. He showed you and Jared about, like, how you guys were making Saisons and English Milds.
And that was done by a good friend of ours who, like, pestered me for years to get to do that. So it's like, all right, finally, you can come film. And so, we're guilty of that for sure. Just like,
well, it's very. I mean, you guys aren't going out. Like, it doesn't. I think they say that because it doesn't feel like you guys are like going out there and trying to market. But you guys are doing it. But it just because like what you guys are making it is so naturally you guys. It doesn't come across as pushing it on anybody.
Yeah.
So like, I think they get the wrong idea. Maybe.
I see that.
And I think that we talked about before you came on, like BrewedAt, like what we were all about is like kind of bringing a lot of craft beer into the social media world, into Gen Z, and I mean your guys' social media is incredible. I mean on top of like everything else that you got that you can do and create, and you're an artist about is like your photography is incredible.
Thank you.
And kind of that what you guys can do and show on Instagram and social media in general is like like we look at it like this is like as much as people can't copy you because you're better at this than a lot of people, like why aren't even people attempting this? It's like this is. It's very cool.
I think people just probably like overthink it. I don't know if we're trying to dissect why they don't do it or not, but I think a lot of people are like, what should I do for Instagram? What's the right thing to do? Like, hey, tell me what the right thing is to do. Whereas we're just like...
Maybe like what you're saying, like if someone were to tell you like make a design for this English pub or whatever, like that's not me, like I guess everyone else is like trying to like make something else like somebody else, and like they have writer's block kind of, and like they don't know how to get there.
Yeah,
just be yourself and kind of start creating.
It's a hard thing to do.
The creative muscle is like it's definitely a muscle.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't always like that. I wasn't always comfortable being who I am. Just doing whatever came naturally. But that comes with being open for 12 years and and realizing that people are into what you're doing.
Definitely.
Maybe not everyone, but
the people that you want to connect to are the people that are into the same stuff that you guys are into.
Yeah. So we're lucky. Yeah, it's cool.
Nice. So I mean, I guess you didn't want to touch on. I mean, not that you didn't want to touch on, but you guys have like the I would say less cool now, but in the last 5 years or so, like hazy IPAs, everyone was putting out like just new IPA every single week, and like. As much as that's not who you guys are as a brew, like your IPAs are incredible, and it's like you talked about the West Coast IPAs getting a ton of attention now.
Yeah, no, and we make more than 50% of our beers are IPAs, and we're happy with that. We're like that's a lot less IPA than a lot of breweries make.
Definitely.
So we're very blessed to be able to make these other beers, for the other 50% of our beers, but yeah we make hazy IPA and we love it. It's like there's no lactose in it. It's not like it's just like a not clear IPA.
Yep.
Not overly bitter, and it hits those notes that people like, and I think they're great beers. But then we've also over the last like 2 or 3 years started making these West Coast IPAs that are just like. And the first time I had one in a long time, I was like, wow, this is really good. This is like I remember what IPA used to be like. And
what gave you that inspiration to try that new?
That's Brian. So. Talked about earlier about Brian DeAngelo joining us. I think it's also our generation too. That's like the beer that we grew up drinking. That was the IPA we're used to. But he's really into those beers, and started making them. And I was like, wow, this is.
So
this
it was
good.
you and Jared to start, and then like when did Brian come
Then
on?
Brian
He
officially
had
became a
been
partner
working-
in 2021.
Okay, but he had been working. He was, I guess, the brewing lead.
Yep.
before
So
that.
he started in fall of 2019.
Okay.
And was with us for like half a year before COVID.
Cool.
Then he's the third partner now, and like has made everything happen. I give him credit for all that. And he's a phenomenal brewer and just like a real smart person. He
You need
sees the
something
things.
them.
Yeah, I mean, like he's concerned. Yeah, Jared and I were just like, we do things the dumb way, and we're just like, whatever, it'll work out eventually. And Brian's like, no, I think we should do this the right way.
Just pump the brakes.
Yeah, exactly. So no, he's great, and the three of us get along very well. And but he's the mastermind behind like the West Coast IPAs, and also our new lager program, which isn't so much new anymore, but that was like 2019, I think we did our first lager. So after
Cool. You said I guess your new brew house is able to do decoctions.
Yeah.
And you guys, I mean, I do see it a lot. Like they're bright, clean.
Yeah, it's
Very
much better
lagers
for,
online, yeah.
for lager brewing. And we did some of them on the old system too, which I still don't know how Brian did that, but
Yeah. No thanks.
we did have glycol at that point, I think. Yeah, maybe. But he somehow made lager and it was good. But yeah, now we're like building up. We have house lager, which is like our year-round lager, and trying to do some flagship beers that
Cool.
we're getting a reputation for. But yeah, that Comet Lager is one of my favorites lately.
Yeah, it's delicious. This is great.
Yeah, and then the Saison there is a really cool barrel-aged like Saison that we brew with some squash that we roasted over a fire. So we brewed the base version of this beer like a year and a half ago, and we canned it, but it was sort of like our fall seasonal Saison, which we don't normally do, but it was like a crazy amount of squash and purple potatoes from a local farm that we then roasted like over a campfire in my backyard.
That's
And,
fantastic.
it was a great day, a lot of fun.
So you say you don't normally do that. Do you have Saison seasons?
Not really. I mean, I'd say like we don't normally do like a fall like pumpkin seasonal.
Well, I can smell it right now. I can do the bread
it's a
just
cool
hit
beer.
me.
Yep.
So from a non-brewer perspective,
Mhm.
how much like squash does that take to then
I wish I could
flavor
remember that.
this?
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
long day of roasting over the fire.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not like over the top flavored. I mean, it's pretty subtle at this point. Like even the base beer was pretty subtle,
Mhm.
but it was in there, and but then it's since been barrel aged for a year, so it's whatever little bit was in there is probably now overtaken by the
I mean,
barrel
just the
character.
label itself is very cool. It's like this
Thanks.
thick white
So that
matte paper that like wraps like 3/4 of the way around. Like even that's like kind of a unique.
I like those labels a lot. Just the feel of them. It's like different from
It's like
these.
feels like expensive like wine label.
Yeah, I mean,
or
these-
something.
I feel like these bottles just need something a little
Definitely
heavier,
special,
like little,
yeah.
a little more special. But the actual label itself was cool. So I took some of the squashes and like cut them and then just did prints of them,
Cool.
and just did a whole bunch of them and kind of like separate them in Photoshop and picked ones I like.
Nice.
And then made it purple for like the purple squash. So
That is very
super simple. It's one of those like really simple labels that took a long time to do, just because it's like.
I mean, if you look at it, it
Yeah.
looks amazing. Just like I've never thought that that's what it is, but just in itself, it looks cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not the beer's not for everyone. I don't know if you're a Saison fan,
I like Saison.
but yeah, it's a cool beer.
That's very good.
Thanks.
What gives you like? Obviously, you went to art school. You
Mhm.
have a background. Like anything that you can recall that gives you like some sort of creative energy with what you do.
For like the labels or just
I would say labels, but
Yeah.
I guess also just in general. I mean, it's a whole.
yeah.
There's a lot to it, I'm sure.
There
I mean,
is,
it
yeah.
seems like all over the place, but like
Yeah.
where, like
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, that's usually the hardest part. It's just coming up with the concept, and then once
Yeah.
that's fleshed out, it's like pretty quick. But yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, certain beers just have a certain feel to them. I mean,
is it something that you need to try the beer before you?
No, I mean, that is good. Yeah, that's a good question. At this point, I don't think so. I mean, just because I sort of know, like, you
What
know,
the general?
yeah, like
guardrails
the hazy IPAs usually have a little more, like, I don't want to necessarily call that cartoony. This guy, but a little more. They're a little more like character driven.
Definitely.
psychedelic maybe. And then like these British inspired beers are usually more like, I don't know, subdued, but like I've been playing a lot with these like wallpaper and frame kind of concepts for some of the classic like British style beers. And then we had a run of beers like these where there's these more like atmospheric, kind of like abstract but landscapey things that just sort of like, I don't know, harkens back to like some British feelings, for lack, better.
Definitely. I mean,
word.
you drink with your eyes first, and I mean, like, looking at these things is, like, not that like that looks like a beer, but you look at it and you get kind of the olfactory sense. You're expecting to taste these kind of things.
Yeah, the West Coast, again, it's a lot of like, I don't know, West Coast California colors, and those tend to be much more like graphic driven. I make them all in Illustrator. It's very sharp lines, and
I feel like the whole IPA kind of culture, hazy IPA culture, that was like this like 16-ounce can that it kind of leans into that.
For sure.
That neighborhood also.
Yeah, it's hard not to be too influenced. I feel like a lot of hazy IPAs, especially like 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. I don't even know how long they've been around, but they all had a very similar vibe to them. Very like Illustrator, kind of like character driven.
Definitely.
Weird imagery.
Yeah.
A lot of skeletons and skulls and. So I certainly try and like avoid some of the cliches, but at the same time, then we had a whole series of like skeleton labels, so it all comes around.
Nice.
Is it hard to then like finalize when you have something there and be like, okay, I'm happy, this is it? Because I know
some of the labels. I mean, that's like I was saying, like this label is probably so much harder to do than this label.
Yeah.
Just because like anytime it's like a real simple design, for me, there's no room for error. Whereas with this, it's like, you could have some messed up elements on it and no one would ever know.
Yeah.
But like one image on a label, it's got to be perfect. And then it's like, could it be bigger? Could it be smaller? Could it move over? And how's the text work? They're like such simple elements, but they say a lot, and they can be
totally.
Like,
so how do you get into some of the photography? I don't know if there's video to it, but like some of the stuff you do on social media where it's like miniature sets, kind of. Not sets, but it's almost like you create this scene around it with like smoke and trees and.
Yeah, that was when I had a lot more time during COVID.
Right.
But no, I miss doing those. Those were a lot of fun. We just like. So it was like everything was closed. We were just doing like takeout and delivery sales. So it was just like we had a lot of time to just have fun with images, but also like everyone's on their phone all day long. This is like the height of COVID. It's like what I have to like. I can't just post a picture of the beer, although that probably would sell too, just because people were buying a lot of beer at that point. But it's like, how do I make this stand out? And to me, like the photo was just like another element of the label. It's like another chance to
definitely it's an extension of it.
Create an environment for the beer and like tell the viewers something about the beer.
I mean, I think as a craft beer fan, it's something that you're looking at. It's like you're looking at the beer and like to them, like they're imagining, like they look at that, like they buy it. So like even when they drink it, they're thinking about like all that work that you put in.
Yep. So yeah, those were cool, and we had like the I guess like another element of that was the whole place was closed to the public. So where we used to have live bands play, just turned into like my photo studio. So I had like tons of room, and just could set up lights and like curtains and all this fun stuff, which I no longer have room to do. So it's probably why I don't do it as much these days. But I still every now and then I get like really inspired and I'll do a quick one of those. But yeah, they were a lot of fun.
Nice. So I mean, what sort of do you guys are just all around Philadelphia? Are you guys self-distributing or? We're
self-distributing in like the 5 counties around Philly, and then we're with Serene for the rest of PA and Jersey, which is pretty new for us. We signed up with them last summer, I think it was.
Okay.
So it's a big change for us having beer that we have to sell these days. Because we went from having like a 7-barrel system and just sold it all.
Yeah, you couldn't even
over
make
the
it
bar.
up to sell.
So yeah, it's weird for us in terms of just like sales and getting the beer to people. But then for me, for labels, it's like, all right, now this beer might be ending up on a shelf somewhere where you don't have like our fantastic bartender telling the person like, hey, this beer is great, it's my favorite. It's like this English summer beer. You just have someone looking at the label, and hopefully the label catches their eye, but then also hopefully the label tells them a little bit about what the beer is, which we used to put a very minimal amount of things on the label. Like the cans are sold by the bartenders. They have super informed staff telling the consumer what it is. But now you have somebody picking up on a shelf, and they need to know what this beer is and whether they want it. So for me, that was a big learning curve. It's like I can no longer do exactly what I want. I have to try and play the game a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How has your role changed? I mean, over the 12 years. I mean, you were probably hands-on in the beginning brewing.
Yeah,
So you're not so hands-on now, but you're more the kind of design.
Right. So when we opened, we were managing the restaurant, brewing beer, closing. It was like that, for
Just you and Jared.
Yeah, for the year or two, we were just doing everything. And then we quickly learned we don't need to manage. We don't need to be there closing every night. We can
There's
pay
also
someone
probably
else.
someone that's better at this.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a big eye opener for us. So we can pay money and they're better at it, and then
Everybody
we
wins.
can do what we're better at.
Yeah.
And maybe see our families on occasion.
Yeah.
So yeah, we for the first couple of years we did everything, and then we slowly backed away from that. Jared and I were still brewing all the beer, and then I forget when we first hired someone, but we hired a brewer to help us out, and he was with us for a while. Zach Svoboda, who now is one of the owners of Trouble's End, the brewer
Cool.
out there.
Oh, cool.
Awesome guy. He's a dear friend now.
Nice.
And then slowly just got ourselves. It's we can teach someone how to make the beer that we make. We don't have to do that either, although we both want to and like to. So I stepped away from the brewing, but even up until 2019, I was still brewing on occasion. And then since COVID, I pretty much haven't brewed a beer. And I'm still involved in we have production meetings, and it's what should anyone have any ideas? Do you want to see anything brewed? And I'll suggest some old beers or something hey, I was thinking about this style of beer. But now my day-to-day is pretty much work from home, doing beer labels, photos. I'll come in and get cans or take photos of the bar or whatever. So just social media, labels,
Nice.
all the imagery for whatever, any events we're doing. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Speaking of events, you did a really cool, the mild passport.
That was fun.
That was really
Yeah.
cool. I love seeing
That was,
the different places.
That was a really cool idea that I think Jared and Brian came up with.
Yeah.
And it was just great to get all these breweries involved, and there was a real sense
Oh,
of community.
You guys were the one that put that together?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. That was a nationwide thing. I thought that you guys were just a part
Well,
of
we
it.
didn't start March Mildest. That was started by Machine House out in
Okay.
Seattle.
Okay.
And we've been doing that for a couple of years now, where it's you go to the bar, you order a pint of mild, you get a point, and then
Gotcha.
we have a mild master at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
But this year we expanded it a little bit and did a mild passport.
Yeah.
So any brewery, I think we did 100 miles around here.
Okay.
You could sign up. You had to have mild on for the month of March, and then you as a consumer would get this passport, and you would go to X brewery, whatever. If you order their mild, you got a stamp on your passport, and then we had a party at our place at the end of the month and had prizes and everything. But it's just great because it got everyone talking about mild and got everyone talking about 30 breweries that were on the passport, and got all the breweries talking to each other and just having fun, and it was great. It was
Yeah, the ultimate collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Fun
it was a real
collaboration.
sense of community that I feel we haven't really
The
experienced.
craft beer
that
has
much.
lost touch of that a little bit.
I mean, there's so many people these days. It was nice because I got to meet some of these new people that I might have heard about, but I don't get to go out that often. And when I do, honestly, I'm going to another brewery is not top of my list. Just
You're living it.
yeah, exactly. And you can only tour so many breweries and pretend to be interested in their brew house, but that makes me sound awful, but it's I generally enjoy meeting these people and getting to taste their beers and stuff, but
Yeah.
sometimes on your day off it's just I don't really want to do
Yeah, but
no,
also
it's
there's some sentiment to you love what you're doing and
Mhm.
you love creating what you're doing, but that doesn't mean that you need to see what everyone else is
Right.
doing as well.
Mhm.
As much as you're passionate about your brewery, that doesn't you're not going to these other breweries doesn't mean that you're not
right.
taking your brewery to the
Yeah.
next level.
So the point is, it was really cool to get everyone together and
Yeah, that's awesome.
meet some new people and
Mhm.
talk about mild, which is cool.
Yeah, the whole mild English beer, I mean, Saisons, everything that you guys kind of been doing is coming to a front where these are the cool things.
Yeah,
to do.
finally. We stood our ground for 12 years and we'll get the little payoff now. But no, it's cool. It's I give Human Robot a lot of credit for beating the mild horn and or not the mild, the lager horn.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just I don't know if COVID. There was a weird thing that happened with the first week or two of COVID where we started doing home delivery with beer. And before COVID, we were always brewing these beers, but with like a British style beer, we would keg a lot of it. We'd can like, I don't know, a third of it, and then the other third would go out to distro. And that third of the batch of cans would sit around forever, like just would last forever. No one would buy it. It was just like an excuse for us to have some cans. But then once COVID hit, and we were doing home delivery, people were like, we were selling out of these beers. We're like, where are these people? Like, we joked that like all these people were embarrassed to order these beers out in public, but now that they're like at home and no one can see what they're drinking, they're like, yeah, actually that beer's really good. So, so yeah, since COVID, I feel like we've just seen a huge uptick in the consumption of these beers, and like people just seem to, I don't know what it was, but
they got an appreciation for it. They were able to sit down and actually like
exactly,
realize, like,
yeah,
what they were.
Or some people said like everyone's day drinking and they can't drink double IPA all day long. So.
For sure, for sure.
But either way, it's cool, and we're really happy that we're selling this much, 4% beer.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool.
So what's next for you guys? I mean, you guys just kind of been doing your own
question.
thing for the last 12 years since you're working out.
Why change now?
Exactly.
No, I don't know. We're still trying to like wrap our heads around the whole distro thing. We opened up Jersey in January, I think, which is great for us. Yeah, just still trying to get a handle on like timing of beers and how not to brew too much of something and all that. And I feel like it's been 2 or 3 years now with this new brewery, and starting to feel comfortable with the brewery, but just now we're like, our problems are different. It's just managing like, moving beer around now and all that. We're talking about a Saison Fest. So
Very
although I
cool.
just listened to Jake's episode today, and I was like, beer fest. I don't know if I want to do that. No.
Just get
But-
Meredith and everything will be
Exactly. Yeah, we talked to her a little bit. So yeah, that's hopefully in the works this fall sometime. But the fall gets so big. We were looking at dates, and it's like all of a sudden the fall. It's like when
it's
can you
over.
do
It's
it?
over before it even started.
Yeah. So realistically, it'll probably be next spring. Once we.
That's
get a
very
date.
cool. I mean, Collegeville was kind of like this, very cool thing with this lager fest that like kind of everyone's so excited about lagers, but like there is this excitement about saisons. Like I
Yeah.
don't think that there's a saison fest. around
Exactly.
here.
And like, yeah, maybe that'll just raise some more awareness of saison and
Very cool.
get some cool saison breweries over here
Yeah.
from Europe. Let's see. So yeah, yeah, just stuff like that. Some more, just having fun with events like Mile. We're trying to figure out something for like something similar for saison, like not a saison fest, but I don't know. There's no alliteration for saison, so like there is for March. So just fun stuff like that. Yeah, but no big leaps and bounds for us in the near future. So yeah, just
Nice. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yep.
This is why people love Forest and Maine and why people continue to love Forest and Maine.
For our laziness.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, do you have anything that you want to push? All right, cool. Well, I
Awesome.
thank you for coming on. I mean,
Yeah, my pleasure.
Forest and Maine has been like a stable, like a craft brewers, drink, like
Awesome.
craft people that are in touch with the industry, like recognize how great you guys are, and like I'm, honored that you guys
That's
could come
very
on
nice to
here,
hear.
and
My
hopefully,
pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. I'm
Yeah.
a big fan.
When I was going down here, my wife was like, "How'd you sign up for that?" And it's like, I don't know. They messaged us, and I like what they're doing, and it seemed like a good fit because yeah, we don't say yes to everyone. It's like we're not hard to get, but it's easy to ignore things.
Yeah, but when you guys do come on, it's always great, and I feel like you kind of
Awesome.
like when you guys do open up, people realize how kind of great you guys are. So,
Nice.
yeah, very
It's nice to
cool.
hear. Thank you.
Awesome. So yeah, I guess that's the BrewedAt podcast. We can follow you guys at Forest and Maine on all social medias.
Yep. Mhm.
Fantastic follow.
Except for TikTok, we're not on TikTok.
Not on
yet,
TikTok. We
I actually
might
think
not
we
be
do
soon
have-
either.
We
But
might have opened an account, but I don't think we definitely haven't posted anything on TikTok. So.
all right.
never know.
Well, yeah. Yes, we're the BrewedAt podcast. You can follow us at BrewedAt, at the BrewedAt podcast, and at BrewedAt, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.